Well, speaking of money, the big story these days, at least in the United States, is what's happening in Washington, D.C. around volunteering in service. We have a new piece of legislation getting ready to hit the President's desk. $6 billion investment from the federal government in programs to help people volunteer and get engaged and be involved in service projects that have some larger impact in the community. This is fairly big news to the United States. We haven't really had strong funding commitment, new investments in federal service in quite a bit of time. I know in Australia it's a little bit different. What do you make of what's happening in the U.S.? What do you think this augurs some kind of trend that we should really be taking advantage of?
Well, I definitely think we should be taking advantage of it. It's interesting that I think, to be frank with you, the US has lacked significant investment in not-for-profit resources for a long time compared to the rest of the world. Internationally, governments put a lot more money and investment into not-for-profits and volunteer management than I think the US government does. I mean, per capita. So I think the first thing, I think it's a welcome trend that your government is saying, this is serious, we need to look at investing in the infrastructure and resources. So that's very positive. The thing I can say, being a non-American, is that I would be saying to people, you've got to be talking to the government. The not-for-profit sector has got to be taking an active role in saying, this is where we think the investment should go. This is what's going to be needed. Because your government, like many governments in the world, don't necessarily understand volunteering or not-for-profits. It's a unique sector. And there's a lot of assumptions made about it. So I think that your government needs to be listening to the not-for-profit sector, but the not-for-profit sector needs to be taking an active role in saying, hey, this is where we need the investment. This is the infrastructure we need. So I'd be nervous that people would set up whole new schemes and whole new programs when there are already existing schemes and programs that should be better resourced. The third thing is that, again, being a non-American, is that I would be hoping that the funding would be as fairly untied as possible, that it wouldn't be tied with lots of bureaucratic strings, so that people, not-for-profits, can get on with the job of actually using the money to the best advantage, without having to do multiple reports and things. I've seen examples of funding programs in the UK and Australia where the government has asked not-for-profits to do monthly reporting. Now that's an incredible impulse to a not-for-profit actually trying to assist. So I'd be saying, let's try and avoid that here. The fourth concern, or third concern, depending on how you count it, is that we also have to be careful how we use the word volunteer in all of this. And there is some parts of government around the world that have appropriated volunteer for their own use. And it's another word that we should be using. So if we're going to say to people, we're going to give you stipended community service, that's what it is. It's not actually volunteering in the traditional sense. And I think sometimes we confuse, and governments can confuse volunteering. It can become a whole lot of things. So that's the next question I'd be saying. But I think it's a very exciting move, a very significant move, and I wish everyone well, and I hope that the investment